When it comes to the second season of Hightown, season 2 definitely can feel like an end of an era for some, yet also the start of a new chapter which could potentially revitalize the series as it goes into season 3. In season 2, the storyline gets split for a good part of it. Part of the story deals with Ray just trying to figure out a way to redeem himself after getting fired from the force, and this leads him to look into his son Nick and for a very short period of time try to reconnect with him until it shows that when it comes to healing old wounds, being accountable and also consistent, it's too much work for Ray. He'd rather focus on getting his old job back, whether it's through trying to wiggle his way into Alan's investigation or use his relationship with Jackie in order to kind of piggyback on what she's doing, while tapping into whatever Renee's willing to tell him as she gets tired of being with Frankie and all that he brings, including his cousin Jorge. As that's happening, Jackie is transitioning from the fishery service over to the state police, and Leslie Babcock, the person who used to have issues with Ray because they had an affair, she doesn't learn from Ray that Leslie isn't someone to be trusted, so she gets into the kind of situationship with her which really threatens her sobriety. Mainly because you can see she transfers her addiction of alcohol and drugs over to an obsession with Leslie, and this makes it so Leslie's highs and lows when it comes to how she treats her, whether it's sending nude pics and then being silent to her, it's not just affecting her relationships with other people and her general attitude, like when it comes to Ed, but it's also threatening her sobriety, which in the long run makes it so as you can see that Jackie is starting to hit that low point, as is Ray. It makes it good for them that when it comes to Charmaine, Ozito, and Frankie, there are enough mistakes made and enough backstabbing between all of them that they get the wins that they so desperately need, though it does come at a cost. One of the things we always appreciate about Hightown, and we saw it in the first season and again in the second season, is that it does course correct throughout the season. At least in terms of what we like or dislike, it feels like the things that aren't working when it comes to the show, it will either downplay or kind of dwindle down those storylines, or else it'll just kill off a character altogether. And granted, in some situations this season, I kind of wish they let some characters live longer, but in other situations it showed that I wouldn't say that when it comes to Hightown they do a lot of things for shock value, even though you could see a certain character getting killed as a means of shock value, but it definitely knows how to navigate the idea that while these people aren't necessarily huge, big-time drug dealers as much as they're touted to be, these people are still criminals and things happen. And then even when it comes to our heroes or anti-heroes, they too go through stuff, and it's not always going to be a linear line of it being good times with Ray all the time, good times with Jackie all the time. Things happen, they have to go on a journey, but what the show never seems to really do is dwell on anything too long unless it's really working. When it comes to picking back off that, the second highlight, the second highlight, it's Charmaine and how her story is modified throughout in order to make sure that some may consider it not really the best type of course correction, but I think it definitely makes it so that when it comes to a character, you get the baseline of who she is, but also a reminder that she's a young girl, she's kind of new to the game, and while she definitely has a certain gangster about her, there are limits to it because she hasn't built the full tolerance or callous to everything that goes around her. Like, one of the things that we really loved about her is that Charmaine is pretty much the only black woman on this show who has any kind of voice, and also she's a dark-skinned black woman to add on to that, and she's just the most badass character on this show. The way she stares down and talks to Alan of all people, it really just makes it so she seems like she's 6 feet tall and he's like 3 feet, a child, and she's just schooling him in each and every scene that she has with him. And even when she's talking to Frankie, it's the way that she plays him, and even Jorge to a point, just makes you enjoy seeing her, and makes it so you almost feel like she should be memed every time, because the fact that this girl who's barely 18 is taking on and talking to these grown-ass men this way is just, it kind of plays on the whole idea that when it comes to certain people, black girls especially, they're a little bit too grown, but it makes it so instead of that being a negative, it's kind of like empowering to watch. And I would even say when it comes to Renee, who sometimes is part of the scenes with her, you can definitely see that one of the things that Charmaine is trying to do is, as much as she wants to put these men in these places, she wants to also rise up women. But unfortunately, despite how Charmaine tries to get Renee more involved and maybe become her point of contact, Frankie ain't having that, so it doesn't happen. The next highlight for us is Ozito, and it's mainly because even with him being locked up, he still remains one of the top characters on this show. For whether you're talking about the gangster side of him, which is going toe to toe with Alan and just like Charmaine punking him, or you're talking about him getting in a cell with a guy named Vernon and showing us, that type of camaraderie which shows love and sort of like a sense of community that he wants to build. One that isn't like based off a transaction, but having actual love when it comes to somebody. Ozito still feels like one of the most complicated yet valuable characters on this show. And when it comes to his journey on this season, from getting locked up, having to go through physical therapy, sort of, I don't want to say seducing Janelle, but definitely reminding us in a Biggie Smalls way, he has both the gangster and also the kind of game that can both put fear into your heart and also make you fall in love with him. It's just, they do so much with this man who has a very unconventional look, because you usually don't see like heavy set, dark skin, afro haired dudes in shows like this who do well on the show, much less are one of the main hooks on it, that I don't think there's enough good things you can say about Ozito. And then considering how things end with him, where when it comes to season 3, he's definitely going to return to a prominent character. It is just, when you want to talk about reasons why I'm excited for season 3, Ozito is definitely like right up there. The next highlight is going to be Daisy's potential, and Daisy's a new character this season who is a stripper who gets with Jorge, Frankie's cousin. And one of the reasons why she's such a highlight is I feel that in a way you could kind of look at her as the new Renee, because she's young, impressionable, and definitely doesn't have her stuff together. Yet I would say, unlike Renee, who pretty much is at that point where she's kind of out of that vulnerable state, even though she's very dependent on Frankie, Daisy has something to her, especially because she's also one of the few Asian characters on this show, if not the only Asian character when I really think about it. There's something new to her, even though a lot of her story makes you think of Renee. For whether it's the fact that she's trying to get back her child, who we meet in the season, her becoming a CI for Jackie, and just the way that she struggles to try to navigate both being a stripper, being Jorge's girlfriend, especially because Jorge is an abusive asshole, and then the way she bonds with Jackie, especially because Jackie this season really tries to be like good cop to Leslie's bad cop. It makes you wish that when it came to this show that we got to understand the people who want in power positions a little bit more, because as much as Ray takes a downfall and Jackie has her issues, you can see that they still have some amount of privilege and a certain amount of power over the situation. Yet with people like Daisy, while you could say Renee is in a vulnerable state, you can tell that Renee knows how to manipulate Frankie, knows how to manipulate Ray in order to gain some type of power, while people like Daisy, they don't have such a privilege. And speaking of Jorge, while I'm still not sure about the gentleman who's playing him becoming Gomez Adams in the new Wednesday Addams show for Netflix, when it came to him playing Frankie Cuevas' cousin, he was able to both give the kind of gangster we needed to make Frankie honestly kind of pale in comparison, yet he was also funny as hell. Him going back and forth with Renee was some of the funniest moments on this show, and it's one of the main reasons why we're labeling this season a comedy, because the things he would say to Renee, the way he would interact with Frankie, even what he would say to Charmaine, who he brought into Frankie's operation, was just Honestly, I wish I could say more without spoiling the season, but the dude definitely showed that whatever they paid him for, he probably deserved more.
This is one of those, hey, it's me editing moments. Forgot to put in Ray as a highlight, because that, I don't even know how, because Ray pretty much holds the show together. For, as I think I'll say with that on the fence part that's coming up, Ray is probably one of the few, if not only, characters that doesn't make the scene completely about themselves. The way the actor interacts with his peers is definitely more of a give and take situation where whether he's in the scene with Jackie, Alan, if he's interacting with Renee, you get a sense that the scene is about them and not about him upping himself. While in comparison, when you bring up Jackie, it's definitely about, oh, woe is me, her issues, and just setting up her next downfall. If you want to talk about Charmaine and Rosito, be it because who they often get paired with or just how they're performed and directed, it's oftentimes like big upping them, making them to this big personality, even if they don't say that much. While Ray is just put him with anybody. Not only will he look good, but he'll make them look good. And while yes, it was kind of trash that they brought up his son and his ex-wife, and they just completely dropped that storyline, at the same time, I think Ray is probably one of the few characters who could actually handle having a separate storyline that doesn't involve Jackie, doesn't involve everybody else, and it's not feel like a liability to the show. But I wouldn't call it an asset, but I still did appreciate us getting to know the life he used to have, especially as he potentially tries to build one with Renee.
So when it comes to low points, similar to season one, I just honestly wish that when it came to Jackie, as much as you realize that she's an addict who doesn't have like a stable support system, her having relapses every 3 to 4 episodes is just really taken away from any sort of sympathy or empathy you can have for her because it happens just so often. At this point, I feel like never mind a tolerance, you build a callous to it because you know as soon as something bad happens to Jackie, she experiences some kind of hardship. Yes, she'll reach out to somebody, like she reached out to some guy who handles the AA meetings. She reaches out to Ray, but you know, oh, I think she also reaches out to Ed. But you know, after that phone call, after meeting them, she's gonna go off to get drugs. She's gonna go off to get drunk, maybe mess around with somebody random. She's gonna try to do anything she can to numb the pain. And again, I understand that her being an addict, this is what she's gonna do. But it increasingly makes her feel like a liability because her storyline repeats itself. And yes, each time she relapses for a different reason, but the return is the same, and the pattern is just getting boring at this point. Almost to the point where we lose one major character this season, and a part of me almost wished that Jackie also got taken out. Just because, as much as we do course correction throughout the show, I feel that while other people have benefited from this course correction, Jackie rarely, if ever, actually does. So the on the fence topic for us is Alan. On the one hand, similar to Charmaine, similar to Ozito, Alan is kind of an anomaly when it comes to shows like this. He's a cop that's clean. He doesn't cheat on his wife. He doesn't cut corners. When it came to going into Jorge's truck during one scene, he did kind of cut corners, but generally speaking, he is a by the book cop. And on top of that, let's not forget that he's a dark skinned man, I believe of Haitian descent, with a Haitian woman who he's married to, has a child, and is family oriented. And he really tries to balance out his work life balance. Everything about him makes him different, but unfortunately, it also makes him dull as shit. It makes it so when he's facing off with Charmaine, when he's facing off with Ozito, when he's in scenes with Ray, you see him as this dull and boring character in comparison because while they made him different in terms of being a good cop, much less a good black cop who is, even in his personal life, a good man, they didn't compensate that with anything. they didn't really give Alan a personality. They didn't really give him like a flaw which can kind of make him seem more human. He kind of just comes off like a RoboCop who, like in the last episode, when he tries to get tough with Ozito, he tries to do this little lip thing. And it's just, I don't know if the Ozito's actor was meant to laugh in the script or not, but I thought it was hilarious when Alan tried to be tough with him, just like it was hilarious whenever Alan tries to be tough. But in what might be seen as course correction, they decide to change things up on Alan, and a part of me wonders maybe that could be a good thing for him, because now he'll have to be in scenes with characters who, let me rephrase, I think that with how they might be doing course correction with him, it might put him in more scenes with Ray. And I would say, unlike Charmaine and Ozito, who are characters that will swallow you in a scene, at least Ray is the kind of character, and Ray's actor is the kind of person who more has a give and take kind of scene with another actor, rather than it's kind of them not necessarily giving you give and take, but more so challenging you to match their energy, which more often than not, Alan just isn't written to do, never mind directed to do. While we do criticize two of one of its lead characters quite a bit in this review, even with that, I feel that with so many positive things that this show does, especially how it course corrects throughout the season, mostly for better, very few times for worse, this is something you should watch. Between Charmaine and Zito as the villains, they kill in every single season and also this season. And yes, while when it comes to their scenes with Alan, they don't necessarily give good back and forth. Instead, they just eclipse him in a way. Once you bring in Ray, who's somebody who knows how to work with her character, even if the character is not someone who drives much interest, he compensates for a lot of what Alan lacks. And then when it comes to Jackie, as much as we don't like her character in a way, mainly because she just seems to have a storyline that keeps repeating itself, there's no denying at times that Jackie is somebody with value beyond being a woman of color who's queer and all that could do for the PR for the show. Jackie is also someone who, when it comes to her and Leslie's relationship, we see it's cute at times to see her in love and enjoying that. Also, when it comes to us seeing her with her father Raphael this season, you want to see them reconcile. You want to see more of what made her this way. And then when you see it with Ed, who's like her surrogate father, there's no denying that their troubles, everything that she goes through with him, it makes it so her character, while she's deeply flawed, and I so badly wish they would stop making her relapse every 3 episodes, you can see that she can make a comeback. It's just they need to make it so when she relapses, it actually has an effect. It actually means something rather than it being part of her routine. So, thoughts on the next season. Right now, the trajectory seems good for this show, but it really depends on what from the finale that we see is going to be finalized. One character potentially died, and if that character died, that opens things up so much in terms of where the show's trying to go. Especially because one of the things the show's going to seemingly do is, throughout the season, Charmaine is going back and forth from New York, and from what it seems, if that character died, that means opening up New York and us getting to see what's going on there. And between, well, we can give some spoilers, between Ozito and Charmaine going down there and possibly linking up, because they bond a bit this season, it really makes you wonder, though, between them and a gentleman whose name is Ralphie, who I believe is the nephew of this guy who calls himself the King of New York. There's so much potential there, especially because certain things happen with Ray and Jackie where they may get involved. And when you start adding up all the potential of that alongside what Alan's probably going to do, just going to piss Ray off so much, I definitely am excited for the next season. But again, it is really dependent on whether one character in the finale actually died or if that was a fake out. Because if it was a fake out and they're just in a coma, or they're healing up by the time season 3 starts, there's a good potential this show's gonna feel bloated.